I put together this presentation on some experimentation I did during spring quarter with an alternative grading method. And I got this information from this article at the bottom here by Laley. It's called Laley and Gentile. It's called Classroom Assessment for Grading to Assure Mastery, Theory and Practice. And it was super helpful for me in looking at grading in a completely different way. So I'm going to go through this presentation explaining to you what I did in my IME 239 class. So this alternative grading method really removes the instructor as the sole decision maker about grades earned, and because it really gives a lot of control to the students. And there's no more counting of points, which is really super prevalent in, at least in higher ed. And I believe this is an illusion of objectivity, this idea that we give points for things and then we can assign numbers to it. And it really removes that. There's really not any more of that. Well, there's a little bit of it, but it removes it mostly. So this is based on some of the information that they have in their article that's based on some cognitive experimentation. And it's really that relearning is quite a bit easier if a student had initial mastery. That's kind of the general concept. But what happens is I have these two lines here, and of course they're imaginary lines. One is if the student has achieved mastery. And mastery just means really a deep understanding of the topic, not just cursory and not really, it's kind of like not at a C level, but more like an A level, that somebody has an understanding of it. And these lines trace over time the movement of learning or achievement in mastery or not mastery. So initially they start at the same place. And what we see is if a student has learned it to a pretty high level, like indicated by the blue line here, that they get better grades. And then if someone's learned it at a lower level, say a C or a D level, of course their grades will show that. But for both of the students, forgetting is almost complete. And I think this is going to be important for us to remember. If we teach in a way that we know this is going to happen, we can really change the way that students end up learning. So don't expect the student will remember anything really. That forgetting is almost complete for both. And this is based on some experimentation that they cite in their paper. But what happens is over time, people can relearn much quicker, much better. Relearning is much better if you have an initial mastery, and in fact, you'll learn it deeper. And so that's really the idea, that if you require mastery at the beginning, then relearning becomes easier. And then over time, the achievement is higher for those who have had mastery. There is something that if you don't get mastery, what happens is they hypothesize that people create inside their own mind a sense of learned helplessness. I don't know if you've heard this term before, but what it means is that you attribute to yourself that you just can't do something, that it is learned that, see, I can't do it. I've never been able to do it. And that's mostly because we don't require that deep learning along the way. So my argument, and their argument, is also that if we require deep learning initially, that we can really facilitate deep long-term learning. And this is what they've seen in experts, that experts in a topic really have this kind of trajectory of learning, forgetting, and then ultimately just sort of internalizing it. And that's what we want in our students. So what does this mean for grading? That it's actually, I'm going to illustrate grading in the sense that we have a bunch of learning objectives for our course. These little sticky notes indicate the learning objectives that we've sort of spelled out. They might be every day, they might be every week, they might be at different levels of specificity. They might be large or small, but we all have them. Maybe not completely spelled out, but we have them. And what we generally do is we test on each of these learning objectives, and we say, well, how much, as a percentage, how much have students learned on these? Now, some are more important, so we give more weight to them. Sometimes we group things together and we say, well, I'm going to test on these 5 things, but generally what we're doing is assigning a score to that. So in this example, I just said for each of these learning objectives, whether they're test problems, whether they're homework problems, or whatever, we've assessed it, and these are the scores people have gotten. And if I average that, which is generally what we do, sometimes we do a weighted average, but we generally average it, and in this case, the student would get a C minus. Some of them were at high levels, 100%, some of them were not at all. And so my argument is, what if we look at this in a different way? What if some of the learning objectives are more important than others? That these, I absolutely think they need to learn for sure. For instance, there's some things like in engineering economy, which is just the thing I know the best. Time value of money. F is equal to P times 1 plus I to the n. That is a really core concept. If they don't understand that and how to manipulate that, really they don't have anything about engineering economy. But issues like should you use internal rate of return, because there might be multiple instances of a value for internal rate of return, and so you shouldn't use it. You should use net present value. Those are those would be nice to know, but really the times when that's an issue are pretty minimal. So those are not learning objectives that I think are most important. And I can totally identify the most important learning objectives in this course. So what I do in this mastery level is I require them to get at least 90% on these learning objectives. The others I'm not so concerned about. So if a student wants to earn a C in the class, they have to get 90% on these most important, these ones I've identified. 90%, that sounds like an A, but what I'm saying is 90% on the most important ones earns you a C. And then I might do something else where I'll say, well, if they earn half of the rest of them at a 90% level, then I'll give them a B. Or I might say all of them at a 90% level, then I'll get an A. But really this gives them the choice to just say, if you want a C, just master these, and I'm good with that. Another way that the way that I've done this in my class is I take away all the other learning objectives and I say these are the most important. And so if you do those, then you'll get a C. But if you want, it's important to me that you learn something new and that you're engaged in the topic. So I say, if you want to learn something new, one focus area of learning something new will get you a B. Now, what I've done in the past, I said you write a research report, you create a video, you create a tool. The students have done Excel spreadsheets as a tool for doing some of the analysis. If you do 2 of these, then you get an A. And so it really gives a student control over the choices they make about getting things done. Now there's some nuts and bolts about this that I want to really highlight because you might have other questions, and of course you can ask me more questions. But really, students need all the resources available to relearn topics. So if I require a 90% level, I need to make sure that there's enough resources for them that they can learn that. And I've found that a flipped classroom is really, really helpful in that I have a lot of time with students. I can work with small groups of students who are having problems with topics. And also the PolyLearn is set up in a way that I have a bunch of resources available for them, and they're clear about what it is they need to learn and where they can get those resources. So it's super important to have this resources available. And then students also need to be able to retake exams as many times as they want. So they take an exam and they get 80% of it. That's not good enough on the mastery stuff, so they need to retake it. And this puts a little bit of weight, a little bit of work onto me to create multiple exams, but I've actually it's not more than it would have been in the other situation where I graded all the homework. This is actually less work for me. And then extension learning, like if they want to do a new focus area, I encourage them to submit it to the instructor, to me, and then I review it and I say, oh, I think you need a little more in this. And it's not a graded thing, it's just that you need to do a little bit more effort. And it's amazing, mostly students know when they need to do a little bit more. Other observations I've had is that that because students might choose to just learn the mastery items. In fact, I had some students do that, and I needed to be okay with that. I needed to respect their decisions about not getting a B or an A, that they just wanted to take the test and be done with it. I needed to respect that. They have choices to make, and they can make those choices. And if a student gets a low exam on the low grade on the exam, the really great thing is they don't just put it in their binder. They actually look at it and say, darn it, I got to learn this because I got to get a 90 on it. So they come back and they send to me, help me with this. I don't understand this concept. And that's so satisfying to me as a teacher. Some students will make choices about preferring a C. Again, I think that's related to the first one. You have to be okay with that. It also removes me a lot from the power position. and you have to be okay with that too, that really it's their choices about learning. And the exam is a standard, a mastery that's set aside from me. Of course, I wrote it and they know I wrote it, but really I'm just saying, well, that's just what I said. That's the thing we agreed to at the beginning, that you would get 90% on this exam, and you can take it as many times as you want. I just wanted to give you a couple comments from students in the class. I administered a couple of surveys, and this is some of the comments I got. I'm just going to go ahead and read it to you. So the first one says, I really enjoyed the grading structure. I loved getting to choose the subjects I would do reports on because it didn't narrow my possibilities, and I was able to tap into my interests instead of conforming my interests to the specific assigned task. I appreciate the retakes of the midterms because I'm not a very good test taker, so having the ability to take a test 2 times took a lot of anxiety off my shoulders about not passing the first time. I really feel empowered in my education as a result of this class because I've finally got an A in a meaningful course, and I no longer feel like I am wasting my time and effort by getting B's and C's in classes that are important. I really love the way Liz helps educate us. The next one is, I thoroughly enjoyed the grading scheme. It gave me reachable goals from the beginning of the course and left the responsibility to me whether I wanted to earn an A or F. The next one, I learned more about myself and how it would be in a real world on staying current with topics. And the last one, I feel like I took advantage of the opportunities offered by the course and by Liz, but some, maybe most students did not. It takes a real go-getter to be able to control one's own learning, and in my experience, a great amount of students are not used to that. My openness for other ideas really bloomed in this class, and I'm very excited about 4:30 with Liz. So I think you can see from this we got some good outcomes associated with taking responsibility and understanding the nature of learning and the nature of your own responsibility in the process. So I would just encourage you to consider this option. You might want to read more on it, might want to read that article, and or talk to me. Thanks. Bye.